folks, and welcome to Cressy in Tasmania. Today we're going to be looking at one of Tasmania's most compelling UFO cases that occurred on the 4th of October 1960. Come with us now, we'll take you into town and we'll see what happened. Okay folks, here we go, and I'll tell you a little bit about the town on the way. Cressy is located in the northern part of Tasmania and is 36 kilometres south of Launceston. It's been pretty much a traditional farming area. It's not really known for tourism, and it was established by the Cressy Company in the early 1800s, which was a large agricultural farming business. And the area's been traditionally known as a wheat growing area, but in more modern times it's really become known for its poppy growing. And also you'll find in the area many Hereford cows and sheep as well, so it's really your traditional little town, and the population is around about 1,000 people. It's also known for trout fishing, and they have a festival here every year which draws people from many corners of Australia. On the 4th of October 1960, the Reverend Lionel Browning and his wife, minister of the church in which I'm currently standing, had an incredible UFO experience. At 6:10 p.m, the Reverend's wife, Mrs. Browning, drew the Reverend's attention to sunlight on fields during the break of a storm. Mrs. Browning noticed a strange object emerge from the cloud. It was 300 foot wide, cigar-shaped object with 4 bands around it. The object was approximately 3.5 miles away from the house and 400 feet up, and the backdrop against which it sat was the clouds, so it stood out very clearly, and both the Reverend and his wife could see it plainly. The couple watched the object for about a minute as it travelled north, and it then stopped. Then from the clouds emerged 5 disc-shaped objects which joined the mother craft. They watched it for another 30 seconds, and the cigar-shaped object moved straight back into the cloud cover. The sources that joined the mothership were a silver grey in colour, slightly lighter than the cigar-shaped mother craft, and they were about 30 feet in diameter. In his report, Reverend Browning estimated that the mothership was travelling at about 50 to 70 miles an hour, and that the saucer-shaped objects that came and joined it were travelling at jet-like speeds. Here we are at the rectory, the location of the sighting. Now the rectory was built in 1959, and at that time there were absolutely no gardens here like there is today. There's lots of growth, the trees, the shrubs and bushes have all grown up quite a bit. But at that period in time, the rectory was on a hill, and it had a very commanding view right across the valley. So from the northern area all the way down to the south, they had wide, clear views of the surrounding countryside. So what I really find fascinating about this particular case is for 1960, for a minister of religion to say that he had seen an unidentified flying object I think is fairly big. And it was also, at that time, it received a lot of publicity across Tasmania as a result of that case. He rang the local airport at Launceston after he'd seen it to report it, and they told him that they hadn't seen anything at that particular time, and the story got out to the local media, and it was pretty much across all of Tasmania in the papers at the time. So it became a very, very big case. And the Reverend, he was very brave to, in that particular era, to come forth and make this type of statement, which I think makes him a very credible witness. The Reverend and his wife were at this dining room window when they saw the extraordinary objects. So the view I'm now giving you folks is the direction in which the minister and his wife saw the objects. Now, as you can see, the trees have definitely grown up in that time, but in 1960 those trees were not there, and the view they had was very commanding. Due to the coverage and publicity that the case attracted, the Air Force came and spoke to Reverend Browning and his wife. They spoke to him for an hour and a half about what they actually saw, and they were very meticulous about going over the events and recreating the events of the day. So they did come down here, they did speak to them, and they also spoke to some other witnesses who saw objects a few days later in the same area. And the Air Force came down again, they did reconstructions with those people, and they told them not to talk about the objects that they had seen. What was the Air Force's official conclusion on this case? Well, they concluded that the moon was rising over the horizon at the time, and due to Scud-type clouds moving, that the Reverend and his wife had mistaken these clouds for UFOs. Now, during their questioning of Reverend Browning, not once did they mention clouds or the moon rising. Okay, now on that same evening, on the 4th of October 1960, there were some reports of some strange explosions in the Cressy area, felt by many of the townsfolk. And people described it as being almost like the air was being sucked out into a strange silence just prior to the explosions occurring. Because it was 6:10 in the evening and later thereafter when the explosions occurred, the development at the hydroelectric scheme out at Patina wasn't underway at that particular hour. So residents were used to blasting and things like that out at that site. But at that time of the evening, there was definitely no work going on in that location. So we've got Reverend Browning and his wife, two very credible witnesses in the community, pillars of the community, and we've also got strange explosions occurring on the same evening. Now, in the preceding weeks and the preceding months after the Reverend's encounter, there were some other sightings in the area, and I just want to go through some of those with you now. A Mr. and Mrs. K. Woodward saw an orange-coloured ball hovering above the Western Tiers, which is south of Patina, at the time of the explosions. They saw it for 1.5 minutes, it was 200 feet high, and faded out with a loud explosion. On the 14th of October 1960, a woman and her daughter saw a cigar-shaped object 300 feet up at 4:30 p.m. in the Cressy area. On the 18th of October 1960, a man and his two sons were fishing at Longford. His name was Mr. R.J. Bricknell, and his sons Robin and Terry, who were 13 and 10 years of age. So they were fishing around about 7 and 8 p.m. An object swooped down over them, made a whizzing noise, the orange light flicked on and off, and they described it as being an aircraft without wings. It stayed for a short time and then shot off towards Western Junction. A pencil-like object was seen over the Great Lakes on the Friday night between 7 and 8 p.m. It was described as being 3 to 4 feet long, really high, and white or bluish in colour. So the area at the time had supporting reports that really, I think, indicate that there was something happening here in 1960. I've also found some additional cases that occurred at the time as well. In Launceston, a family from Talbot Road saw a bright object hovering over the Waverley area for about 3 or 4 minutes. that moved off at speed in a southwesterly direction. On the 17th of October 1960, a couple and their son saw a strange object emitting an eerie light south of Launceston, near the airport, and it was flying towards Cressy. They described it as being 1,000 feet up, emitting an orange light, and approached at terrific speed. So folks, there you have it. An amazing case that occurred here in Tasmania in 1960. One that did receive a lot of publicity at the time and is also backed up by strange explosions and many other reports that have come from the local area. So what happened? Why were they here? My guesstimate could be that they were here looking at the hydroelectric scheme that was actually being constructed around that time, and that brought increased activity. Reverend Browning himself thought that the object might have been Russian, and for 1960 that was definitely in the middle of the Cold War period, so you could really understand why he would have thoughts along those lines. So thanks again for joining us today. If you get a chance, do some more reading up on the case. It is a fantastic UFO event, and we're happy to have been able to present it to you. I'd like to thank the people of Cressy who've been very helpful in helping us bring this case to you, and I'd especially like to thank the local minister of the Church of England who lives here currently, as he gave me express permission to enter this area to bring this case to you. So we had special permission to film here. It's not an open area to the public, so I really hope you've enjoyed what we've been able to capture today.